Introduction. A new devlog. October 18th, 2017. 1:53 AM, Tokyo. I live in Tokyo with my wife, working as a composer and translator on freelance terms while creating my game Healing Process Tokyo. From today, please visit healingprocessgame.com for more details, photos, and constant updates about the development process. That's healingprocessgame.com. Healing Process Tokyo. I am going to begin the story of the development of my game Healing Process Tokyo from the beginning. Where else? I originally had the idea for this game in late 2014. At that time, Healing Process was a simple story of an English doctor called Charles Russell living in Tokyo, having problems due to his depression. These problems include unnecessary deaths during surgery, with Charles being completely unable to take care of his patients correctly. The end game was going to be one final surgery that the player had to prepare for. They would then be given a grade and a good, bad, or perfect ending, depending on how well they did. In 2017, the game has the same storyline. However, it includes a twist of dream therapy, which allows the game to include side-scrolling battling, exploration, and various Metroidvania-style game elements. The original plan for the gameplay was about 5 to 10 hours, however, now the scope of the game is huge, with over 100 enemies, 200 screens worth of areas to explore, not tileset based art mind you, each area drawn individually by hand. Back in 2014, I had no idea how to go about making games. I had no idea about making animation or programming. One thing I did know about is creating a good soundtrack and sound effects for a game. I draw a massive amount of inspiration from Final Fantasy 6, 7, 8, Star Ocean for Super Nintendo, and more complicated scores such as Grandia for the PlayStation 1. Soundtracks and imagery from movies such as Angel's Egg, Metropolis, and Ginga Tetsudo no Yoru, or Night on the Galactic Railway, have been endless sources of inspiration to me. I have listened to these three soundtracks thousands of times each while drawing game art and writing the script for the game late at night. Honestly, the reason I began making a game was so I could write a long, in-depth soundtrack. The soundtrack will be around 4 hours, and currently in 2017 I'm still creating the game with that soundtrack in mind. I want complete control over the soundtrack and sound effects, the mood of the game, everything. Yeah, I started making my own game to write a soundtrack without limitations. And not only without limitations, but the events and flow of the game being so tied in with it due to my writing and creating the whole experience. Anyway, in winter 2014, I started making the pixel art in ridiculously high resolutions like 1920 by 1080p, drawing everything pixel by pixel. And by 1920 by 1080p resolution, I mean the target window size would actually be 1920 by 1080, with no double sizing of the pixel art assets. Old Super Nintendo games are only about 220 lengthways and widthways. I really did not know what I was doing. I'm now working with a huge screen size for pixel art anyway, which is 640 by 360. It's a lot, but it's manageable for the style I'm drawing in. It was completely ridiculous once I started out, but I used the sprites I made at the time to mess around with the programming and getting used to the game engine. After 2 to 3 months, I decided to start working with an artist called Igor Green, as I wasn't entirely sure what direction to take with the art. I believe we downgraded the pixels at times to around 300 by 200 pixels, roughly, but I don't really remember precisely. Igor goes by the name Grigorine. I'm sure if you type in Google it will come up. He would provide the pixel art for the levels, the sprites, everything except the character portraits. Despite our differences and issues during creating Healing Process Tokyo in the beginning, I believe to this day that he is talented as a pixel artist and I wish him well with his career as an artist. Shortly after Igor joined the team, I found Niho Ame, an artist who again I believe to be very skilled. I am a fan of him and his work and still consider him a friend to this day. We began working together on Healing Process Tokyo with the agreement that the game belongs to me, but we would have a rev share reflective of the person's work on the project. Everyone owns their own work until payout. We worked together until September 2015, aiming for Kickstarter. The Kickstarter campaign was rushed. I'm sure it'll come up in searches if you type Healing Process Tokyo Kickstarter. You should check it out, it'll be the top result. I believe it will definitely be worth comparing it to the Kickstarter campaign I will be launching soon in 2017. The music and programming, trailer, and other elements were by me. The promotion art was by Niho Ame, and 95% of the pixel art was by Igor Green, with me filling in a few holes during programming. We actually got some backers, about 150 people. I'm eternally grateful for these people, however we only got about 35% of the money we requested, so the campaign failed. The demo was poor, buggy and boring. I thought, okay, well that's that, and directed those who backed to the pre-order page on my site. I got some pre-orders, not a lot, but a few, saying that it wasn't even enough to pay a month's rent or anything. As time went on, Igor and Niho's work slowed down. I was requesting art assets and pieces for the game, and the pieces from Igor were either rushed or subpar, or just too late. Needless to say, without money, people can't prioritize making a game like this. But I have always prioritized it, even over my own work. Igor gave me reasons time and time again as to why he couldn't create the art fast enough, and eventually his excuses were just too much to deal with. He claimed he had given up all of his money to help out his sick friend, and I gave a cold response like, well, those excuses aren't going to help the progress of the game, are they? At this point, I was sick of his excuses, and I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth or not. I was very cold to him at that time, and anyone would say it wasn't the best way to deal with things. I parted ways with Igor. We blocked each other on Skype and Facebook, and I didn't see him around online from then on. However, I kept him as an admin on my Facebook group by mistake, honestly. I forgot he was an admin, and I didn't even use the group very often at that time. This lack of awareness came back to bite me about a year and a half later, but I'll save that story for next time. With Igor off the project, I began working on the pixel art myself. Honestly, I wanted to go solo at this point, but I couldn't bring myself to kick Neho off the project, and decided to continue working with him. I like his work, but like Igor, after this point, he progressively became slower and slower, sometimes with no art for months on end. I like to have control over things, and for that reason, I eventually let go of Neho as well, as he'd only drawn a very few amount of pictures in the space of months. Let me be clear about this now. All intellectual property of Healing Process Tokyo belongs to me. I decided to take the project on by myself. I began again on the art from scratch, and I decided to see it through to the end alone. The story remains the same, how I originally envisioned it, but with new gameplay, battling, adventure in a dream world, as well as exploration in Tokyo. Needless to say, Neho and Igor's assets are not being used in the game anymore, and any media on the website and Facebook group is by me. At the time of creating the original Kickstarter campaign, it goes without saying that I was stumbling in the dark, not really knowing what I was doing, learning various bits of skills along the way. Could I complete a game? Would I be able to make it entertaining? At that time, I probably couldn't have. Now, 2 years later, with the experience of working on this game daily, I have something I feel like I can finally get out into the world. I'm working alone, but this gives me a level of security I didn't have when I was working with others. I will get the game completed how I envision it. I simultaneously can't wait for it to be finished, but I'm also enjoying the development process, crafting each aspect of the game to my taste, getting further lost in the world I am creating. I have made the right choice with continuing Healing Process Tokyo. Not that quitting has ever been an option for me anyway. People may be reading this or listening to this, or not at all, but if you are, you may be thinking that I'm taking too much on and I must get burnt out with all the creation of all the game's assets. However, that's not the case. Once I've had enough of drawing art, I can switch to music, which I never get sick of, and even if I do get a bit burnt out from that, I can go outside and take reference images of Tokyo for inspiration. I'm going to continue talking about how I started drawing art for the game, and the scope of the game next time. Please do come back for daily recordings of my game development on Healing Process Tokyo, and visit healingprocessgame.com for the visuals of how the game has improved from its initial state. Thank you for reading, come back again tomorrow. Sam. Okay, I'm recording this outside today from my apartment complex, and it kind of looks like it's going to rain, so I need to do this soon. One problem I have is I usually talk way too fast, and I can't even understand what I'm saying myself, so I need to be careful about that today. Okay, this is the Healing Process Devlog, Day 2. Motivation. October 19th, 2017, 2:37 PM, Tokyo. I was going to talk about various games, movies and music that have inspired me during the development of Healing Process Tokyo. However, I decided to talk about something different today, which is motivation, and how I remain so motivated to complete this game. Since I was about 9, I've always idolized huge figures in the music world. It started off with Uematsu Nobuo from when I first played Final Fantasy 6, 7 and 8. Iwadari Noriyuki when I started playing Grandia. I heard music continuously for the first time, and like anyone who played those games, I could hum along and I memorized every melody to every instrumental. This is what inspired me to analyze music. Thanks to this experience, I have an obsession with analyzing every piece of music I hear. I'm sure this isn't unique to me, and anyone who composes music probably has that same compulsion. From this age, I wanted to be a composer. But I didn't even know what a composer was or how music was made. I just knew it was the most important thing I had experienced. Music held a kind of magic to me that nothing else did. And what I didn't know at the time was that the experience in games I was playing tied to the music have immense emotional power. I can listen to the track Fisherman's Horizon from Final Fantasy VIII, and all of the memories of that little town come flooding back to me more vividly than places I went to on holiday in real life, or other short experiences in my life. I think the only thing stronger than music in this regard is the sense of smell, but I don't really have an interest in perfume. I've had many people I consider role models thanks to this yearning to compose music. In somewhat chronological order, Uematsu Nobuo from Final Fantasy, Iwadari Noriyuki from Grandia, Matsumaya Kimitaka from Jade Cocoon, Naruke Michiko from Wild Arms, Mitsuda Yasunori from Chrono Trigger, and many more I'll get into in the future. More recently I've been listening to Meguro Shoji from the Shin Megami Tensei series, Kano Yoshiro's soundtrack from Angel's Egg, and Hosono Haruomi's music from Night on the Galactic Railroad. Living in Tokyo, I've had the pleasure of meeting and even befriending some of these people, and I am grateful for that. It's something I couldn't have done when I was 9. People always take you more seriously as an adult. So, my motivation comes from this fact. If there is impactful music, or just loops of arranged sound, alongside emotional scenes and interactive experiences in a game, it can trigger the memories and feelings of the gamer in the time that they originally experienced the game. For me, hearing the Grandia or Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack, or even Jade Cocoon's PlayStation 1 soundtrack takes me back to when I was 9, playing games with my best friend Ethan and being at home, living a happy life as a kid. The music recreates this environment for me, which is probably why I play Final Fantasy VIII once every year. It helps me recapture my youth. Saying that, I'm only 27 though, so, I'm not an old man yet. Growing up with various inspirations to create music, I picked up the acoustic guitar my dad was always playing at about 13 years old and claimed it as my own for a year or so, until he bought me my first electric guitar, a Fender Stratocaster and a small Marshall amp. I played it from when I got home from school until about 2 AM religiously for the next 6 years, while sitting in front of MSN Messenger to keep some kind of connection to the outside world. My aim was clear: I would create music. I didn't yet know how, but I would be creating music. I continued idolizing game composers and imitated their music on the guitar, as well as guitarists, very specifically John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Ask me to play something from Blood Sugar Sex Magic to Stadium Arcadium and I'll be able to play it anytime. As well as wanting to create these experiences with Healing Process Tokyo, and lots of them, I also would like to one day be considered by others how I see my idols. This is a more selfish thought indeed. I too would like to make my mark on the world. I would like to join this group and possibly give someone else the motivation that my heroes have given me. I would like to inspire the same hunger for creation that I have in someone else. Not only for the music, but for anything: animation, art, writing. These are all things that can give people great purpose, and things that I feel aren't particularly encouraged in school. We have English classes, but the main emphasis is on reading the work of others. Music classes are usually a joke, as are art classes in my experience in high school and below. Why do we emphasize so much on the intake of the work of others in school, when we do that outside of school anyway? Why can't we at least have an equal time creating? Okay, I'm kind of taking this on another tangent. Forgive me, as I'm just writing in a stream of consciousness trying to keep everything together. So, motivation, yes. This obsession with music would probably be called unhealthy by most people, causing me to shut myself inside, constantly creating things. But I don't share that opinion. Creating this game has caused me to go outside more than I usually would, taking thousands upon thousands of references and Oh, you're fucking kidding me. This is politics in Japan. So, motivation, yes. This obsession with music would probably be called unhealthy by most people, causing me to shut myself in, constantly creating things. But I don't share that opinion. Creating this game has caused me to go outside more than I usually would, taking thousands upon thousands of reference images in only a year. I have started a band for which I do compose all of the music, but I have somewhat consistent contact with my band members when we practice, and I keep in touch with my band's bassist Benko a lot outside of band time. If you're interested in that project, by the way, we have 2 tracks up on SoundCloud. The band's name is Autocoders. I'm currently recording our first album, another project which I've been working on for almost 2 years now. The website is auto-coders.com. Motivation towards music has always been my main reason for living. It sounds dramatic, but once I discovered music, all the rational fear and feeling of doubting myself slowly faded away. If I can do this, I can do something, and something I hold in high regard. I owe it to music that I've never become depressed or felt suicidal or anything like that. I can't understand people with no passion. Even if I had to stop after losing my hearing, this passion for music has granted me a way of seeing the world differently, and I would definitely just become a full-time photographer or animator or something if I had to give it up. I could talk about this forever, but this is a daily devlog and I don't want to take too much time away from the development. I am attaching an image of today's work in progress, a kind of industrial steampunk-styled laboratory. If you're listening to this recording outside of my official site, please go to the game dev section on my website healingprocessgame.com to see the image. I am also going to provide a YouTube link to the main theme of Angel's Egg, which I find to be endlessly inspiring. That's the devlog section at healingprocessgame.com. As always, thank you for listening. See you tomorrow. Sam. Devlog number 3. Why is it so long? October 19th, 2017, 1:52 PM. Today I've got my hamster beside me and my wife's in the shower, so hopefully it won't spill into the recording, but let's go anyway. One question I am asked by my game developer friends and people in my family is, why do you have to make the game so long? I'm aware that if I make the game shorter, I'll be able to clean up the artwork and tweak the finer aspects of the game more easily. However, I personally wouldn't be proud of making a short 4-hour game, and it wouldn't nearly have the depth that I envision. Today's entry is going to be a bit preachy, with me spilling some likely unpopular feelings about the current state of the game industry and games themselves in general. If you don't want to hear that, I suggest you come back tomorrow and give this one a miss. In the last 10 years, the gaming world has been turned upside down. For a while, indie games ruled the whole scene. However, this has bred the mindset that anyone can create a game. The truth is, anyone can actually create a game now, but the harsh reality is that it has become a market where small game developers have been aiming at mobile gaming. 95% of games out there are poorly produced with little time spent on them, capitalizing on tiny, meaningless yet addictive mechanics. These games have become a go-to grab for cash, and in my opinion, they are the death of nobility in recent games. Allow me to take you back to 1997. Final Fantasy VII is released. You pick it up in your local game shop. You bring the game home to find out that it has not 1, not 2, but 3 game discs. A truly meaningful story unravels as you switch out the discs upon advancing. You finish the game, beating your adversary Sephiroth, who has been tormenting you through days or even months of your life. So you finish the game, and shortly after this, both Final Fantasy VIII and 9 are released, with 4 discs each. Fast forward to any time after 2013, and what are so-called gamers wasting the time on now? Flappy Bird? And on the other hand, AAA games have paywalls, allowing you to throw tens if not hundreds of dollars at games that will most likely not even complete a release. Paying for apparent expansions which should have been in the game upon release. There are good indie games, but sadly there are thousands of shit games too. And these games saturate the market. This isn't a massive problem for the customer, as you can always check YouTube to see what you're about to buy, but it does bury good games that really deserve a bigger market. For those indie game developers aiming to use platforms such as Kickstarter to fund their games, this presents a massive challenge. Making a decent game is hard enough, and the last thing creative people need is the crowdfunding part to become challenging too. If you have good content and good presentation, you should be funded, but sadly this isn't always the case. At any given time on Kickstarter, there will undoubtedly be hundreds of terrible games with overproduced trailers that don't deserve the funding they receive. Don't get me wrong, the past year has seen the release of some great games. To name a handful I personally enjoyed: Hyperlight Drifter by Heart Machine, Owlboy by D-Pad Studio, and Rainworld by Video Cult. And I would also be stupid not to mention the incredible Undertale by Toby Fox from 2015. I would like to join the wave, or looking at things in perspective, the ripple of games bringing back some of the old school nobility to gaming if I can. So I'm creating a fully produced product, offering no paywalls, and no way for the player to bribe themselves past the challenging parts of the game that they just can't overcome. Let's bring back the base challenge of games, shall we? You know, even Final Fantasy, albeit not necessarily challenging, at least had a game over screen, forcing you to go back and try again. A game over screen that frustrated and angered you. Oh what, you feel anger while playing? Well that's good. You should feel something, rather than just
play, it's too hard, I'm just gonna play.
As indie developers, we don't have to aim for the lowest of the low, creating these kitschy games that end as soon as they begin. Let's write a story. Let's create a boss with a backstory who attacked your best friend, or let's program an entire minigame within a game. We can even make a minigame within our game that challenges the player more than a phone app does. Let's then tie that back into the main story. Did you know in Final Fantasy 8 and 9 there was a card game within the game? I've started designing my own minigame within Healing Process, which I'm currently naming Battle Statues. It's essentially a minigame with small figures made of rock or crystal that you find within the game, and can challenge NPCs to play against you in game, acting kind of like a strategy RPG. You then receive or lose pieces upon battling them. I'll put a screenshot below. If you're listening to this outside of healingprocessgame.com, please go to healingprocessgame.com to see the images I'm talking about. I am also adding another screenshot today that I have previously shared on Facebook. It's an area inside the temple inside Charles's dream world. So, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning of this entry, my game will be long. The player can hop on a train, visiting many places in Tokyo with about 100 screens worth of places hand-drawn. Not only that, taking a trip to the Dream Therapist, a staple and core part of the game, will allow Charles to visit 5 dream worlds within his mind. This adds another 120 screens to the game. Again, no tile sets, all individually hand-drawn. The soundtrack, Tokyo. The areas in Tokyo all use established genres of music. Shibuya is big for bands and live music, so the soundtrack from Shibuya will utilise jazz, rock and blues elements. Whereas Nippori is famous for its large graveyard, so samba piano pieces will be used. You can then head over to the bustling Shinjuku, which has a more modern, techno-esque element to the music, a genre for each area, of which there are 10. Music will play a huge role in the story, and I plan to implement classical to extremely modern elements as tastefully as I can. I guess in this sense it's kind of reminiscent of the Persona series soundtrack by Meguro Shoji. The dream world is a complete reverse of Tokyo. While the soundtrack of Tokyo is comprised of strict genres such as jazz or classical music, the sounds of the dream world are taken from other cultures. Gamelan music from Indonesia is one genre I am currently adapting into the game. A powerful adaptation of gamelan music was heard in the movie Akira, in 1988 I think. I think a good example is the track Canada. I will link it below. The powerful use of the other, utilising the music of cultures outside of the West, will invoke mystery of the unknown, which still exists to pretty much everyone in the West as long as the correct music is used. For that reason, in the dream world, the gamer will have a sense of diving into the unknown. I have a feeling that this could be a controversial subject, which I am not particularly interested in arguing about, but I might be forced to one day. As well as utilising types of music and adapting them into the game in my own way, I am trying to create 1 or 2 cultures of music myself. These cultures, or dare I say genres, have come from my own experimentation, and I hope they'll be interesting to the listener. So, to summarise, the reason the game is so long is that I'm pouring a lot of myself into it. I am trying to create a depth to the game, while also fine-tuning every aspect. A lot of time goes into writing and rewriting music, the script, and rethinking and recreating the game's programming, and game mechanics. Once I begin the Kickstarter campaign, this will hopefully be evident by the trailer, music, and art I have created. As always, come back every day to hear my new ramblings at healingprocessgame.com. I'll try to keep it a bit lighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Sam. I'm recording outside again today, so bear with the background noise if there is any. Day 4. Time and care, patience and slowing down. October 20th, 2017, 12:33 PM, Tokyo. Welcome back to the Healing Process Devlog. Today I'd like to talk about something I consider to be the most important when it comes to creation, and that's patience. As I mentioned before, the original Kickstarter campaign for Healing Process Tokyo was not good. Rushing a piece of work will rarely yield good results. When I was younger, I believed everything needed to be done quickly, and if I didn't see results instantly, I would be unsatisfied and give up. The only thing I could really persist at is music, for which I feel now I am finally seeing my progress in leaps and bounds. Why do we rush things? Because we want validation for our efforts. We don't want to feel like we are wasting our time. For that reason, we constantly harass ourselves to make things quickly. In the early development of anything, especially skills for creating a game or creating a music album, it takes time and effort. If something is worth doing, and you are frustrated at getting minor results back, you actually need to continue your efforts and alter your expectations so that you are expecting the timeline of your project to span over a much larger period of time. I don't really buy into self-help that much, but I was trying to find a YouTube video of someone mirroring my realizations about patience from the last year, and I came across this on YouTube. It's a YouTube video called have fucking patience or something? I must say, I agree with Leo from actualize.org here. I'm going to link the video on the written blog, so please check it out at healingprocessgame.com. So where did I learn these values of patience? Well, my granddad always used to make sure to tell me to take time with things I was working on, be it a drawing or putting together a small figure or model. Of course, as a child I couldn't see the value in what he was saying, but I am constantly reminded of it now. So I believe he planted that seed of thought for me. Seeing the first Kickstarter project fail made me realise I would never rush at a piece of work again. In mainstream culture, we are always focused on getting something new and getting it now. And with access to the internet, we are bombarded with information which confuses us. We forget that creation of something worthwhile takes real patience. Let's take Radiohead's music for example. Radiohead will write a song, perform it live and constantly play it live, maybe for years before they record it. And what's the result? The song will go through immense shifts and refinement, until an immensely deep and inspired piece of music with unrivaled depth is born. They record and re-record endlessly until they finally have a piece of music they feel is worth giving to the public. This level of care is definitely something to aspire to when aiming to create emotionally moving art. This is the kind of art that will stick with you for a lifetime. Also, if you are asking people to part with their money, you can't just give them something that you created half-heartedly. I feel like that's completely immoral. Rather than forcing expectations on myself of when the game should be finished, I respect the project for its potential greatness and keep working hard at it. It doesn't have to be finished at any time. I would go as far as to say it should be treated as a being that you're raising, taking care of its finest aspects until it's worth presenting to society. I'm paraphrasing, but I think it's Alex Preston from Heart Station who said, as he was being pressured to reveal the release date of Hyper Light Drifter, "It's ready when it's ready," or "It takes as long as it takes." He had a great amount of patience when creating the game, with an eye for quality which really shows. I will link the video of the developer's release video log below. It's a short but inspiring video which I feel really captures the effort that people will go to achieve greatness. So to keep working without getting burnt out, what can you do? Just don't be so specific and restricting with your creation. There's a reason you had a certain idea when you're creating something. So if you start making something on a tangent that you feel doesn't fit in your project, you should still go with it. Don't force yourself down a certain path and let your creative ideas take fruition. In Healing Process Tokyo, the great thing about the dream world for me is that dreams are a random mishmash of things that you recently experienced during the day. So if I've created something, such as a random clapping monkey toy, well, I'll just throw it in the dream world. I'll then somehow try to link it back to something in the waking life of Tokyo, such as Charles's visit to the zoo. If you didn't visit the zoo, then the clapping monkey toy won't show up in the dream world. I believe that allowing these small, creative, tangential ideas to flourish, rather than trying to control them, is what helps you create the quirky, finer aspects to a game, or any good piece of art. Once you let these ideas play out, you will be able to continue on with the project as you planned, and won't feel bogged down or distracted by small ideas you are constantly pushing away. Again, this comes down to your patience and allowing your mind to move more freely. I think this is the healthiest and most honest way to come at any kind of creative project. While you're still controlling what you put out eventually, you're not controlling your creativity too much. If you control your creativity too much, it can feel forced. So if you just create the thing first and then edit it afterwards, that has much more value in my opinion. And also it keeps you sane as a creator. The way I came to the realization that these small ideas could be directed into a large project, almost like patchwork, was by listening to Radiohead's album, The King of Limbs. As the title suggests, this album is a sum of its parts, with each of the members going away and bringing back a multitude of music samples they had created, and rearranging them in the studio to come up with a coherent project. I am mimicking this patchwork of ideas with Healing Process Tokyo's dream world, throwing in a barrage of random aspects, and then linking them back to the very tangible daily experiences of Charles in Tokyo. Here's The King of Limbs, a full studio recorded live performance with video. It's pretty inspiring to see how they recreated the music from the CD live once you know how it was originally created. Tokyo has a lot less randomness in this regard, as all the places are created after reference photos I myself have taken. While experiencing these places will hopefully be interesting to the player, creating them is a much more specific and narrow process. Take the photo, copy the places, put them together in the game. Like Japan Society, my recreation of Tokyo mimics their way of having a system for everything. If you don't know what I mean, you can probably look it up. In my experience, Japanese society has a very specific set of rules and systems to deal with every situation of life. The way companies work, the way people function in their day-to-day routines and interactions. Everything has a very strict system. And for foreigners, it's actually very hard to deal with. It's one of the main reasons I work freelance. I can't be pressured by the expectations of that system. So for that reason, I escape into the dream world I am creating in Healing Process Tokyo, which defies all of these rules of expectation. Finally, I will leave you with the screenshot of an improvement of the laboratory I uploaded in part 2. I'm going to call it a day here. Please come back tomorrow for my next entry. Thanks for listening. Sam. Devlog Part 5. What is Healing Process Tokyo? And an experience. October 21st, 2017, 2:35 PM, Tokyo. Welcome back. I'm Sam, and this is the Healing Process Devlog. What is Healing Process Tokyo about exactly? Yesterday, I had some good feedback from Yanni H on Facebook in the Indie Game Development Feedback IGDF group, letting me know that my site is lacking a real explanation of what the game actually is about and how it works. So, I've updated the homepage with the following. Healing Process Tokyo is the story of Charles, a doctor who started his own firm once he moved to Tokyo with his wife Miyu. Sadly, Miyu is involved in an accident while Charles is away at a medical conference abroad and sadly passes away before he reaches Tokyo. Charles returns to Tokyo and continues his empty daily life. Months later, his surgeries begin to go wrong, and he is forced by his colleague James, who he brought to work in his firm from England, to take a break and see a new therapist with a controversial but effective technique known as AST, Assembled Slumber Treatment, a type of dream therapy to help him with his chronic night terrors. As for the actual gameplay, the player takes control of Charles through real places in Tokyo, meeting people and helping them with their various issues. The player then dives into the dream world by visiting the therapist and guides Charles through his dreams. Gameplay in Tokyo does not include combat or side-scrolling action, where the dream world does. However, quests and helping people in Tokyo have a direct link to what is happening in the dream world, and sometimes you have to further remedy the issues of people in Tokyo to help work through your own issues and progress through the dream world. I hope this clears up any confusion about what the game is about. One bad experience in Tokyo. A few years ago, in my first year of marriage, I would go to greet my wife from work every day as she was employed by a fashion company while I was working from home. It was a nice routine and gave me a break from my work composing and translating games. This was in summer, just as I was beginning to mess around with making pixel art and game software, but hadn't yet begun thinking of Healing Process. I'm not entirely sure, but there had recently been reports of a foreigner who had assaulted a Japanese woman, or someone in the area that I had to travel through, selling drugs or something, which may or may not have been related to the following events. So I got on the train with my milk tea from Jiro Hanbaiki, which is a vending machine, and at that time I would have been listening to the band called Petrols, with a Z, religiously. If you know Shinoringo, a huge composer and performer in Japan, Petrols is the band of Ukigumo, the guitarist from her former band Tokyo Jihen. Tokyo Jihen meaning Tokyo Incidents, and their music is incredible. I will link two of their songs, one called Tomare Mio, or Check the Stop Sign, and Watch Me below. Watch Me is all about being faithful to one person and not messing around, a personal favourite of mine. I might even start a collection of songs that have no translations here on this very site, as I often translate songs I want to understand in depth in my spare time, because sometimes I cover songs with my band autocoders. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent again. So I was sat on the train listening to Petrols and drinking my tea, possibly playing my 3DS. I noticed an old guy looking at me with an angry face from down the carriage. You know that feeling you get when someone is looking at you. It must be one of the unnamed senses, unless it has a name which I am oblivious to. I'm no stranger to getting weird looks as a foreigner in Tokyo. More often than not, it feels positive rather than negative anyway, with the person smiling kindly. There are occasions where the smiles are mocking though. Either way, it doesn't really bother me what people are thinking. For that reason, I thought nothing of his glare and continued what I was doing, probably playing Shin Megami Tensei 4, which was out early in Japan. Another fantastic game, by the way. So I got off the train to make my change to the train to the station where my wife's workplace was. Try saying that fast 3 times. So I got off the train to make my change to the train to the station when my wife woke. What the fuck? My writing is questionable. Walking in front of the ticket machines, there was the usual flurry of people, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Through the crowd, walking towards me was the old guy. Again, giving me the same glare as before. And I was pretty sure by this point, he was drunk. He was wearing a suit with a loosened collar, and he just seemed like an average salaryman. Now, I want to preface what I am about to say with my honest thoughts of Japan. Japan is a hugely safe place. You can walk alone at night with absolutely no fear of any violence or crime being inflicted on you. And you will definitely be safe, especially where there are lots of people. I don't think my experience is normal at all, and I don't expect it to ever happen to me again either. So, what happened? As he passed me, the old guy grabbed me by the neck. It was seriously painful. I actually couldn't breathe to the extent that I could say he was trying to kill me. Now, in this instance, I immediately felt the urge to throw him to the floor and give him a smack. I didn't. In these situations, I'd like to credit myself as a quick thinker, and I knew that in an area full of Japanese people, a foreigner punching an old man would not look good. So what did I do? I just forced my way walking through his grasp, and he let go. I turned around and looked at him, laughing down at him. He looked absolutely furious. I think he knew how my retaliating would look in an area crowded with people in Japan. What's more, there were police standing about 30 meters away who witnessed the entire thing. I was immediately relieved that I didn't retaliate, because if I had, it would have looked terrible. When I say this guy was old, I mean between 55 and 60, and I will have been about 23 at the time. So I don't think I would have seriously injured him or anything, but I probably would have been arrested. Despite seeing me grabbed by the neck, what did the police do? Absolutely nothing. I couldn't be bothered to go and talk to them about what had just happened, and I didn't want to be late to meet my wife, so I just let it go. I don't want my story to paint a bad picture for you about Japan. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, with the wrong old drunk guy. Japanese people are very respectful of privacy and space, and it still feels like a bad dream to me that this ever happened. The positive thing is, I can use stories such as these in Healing Process Tokyo. I will talk about some of them here, but not enough so that you can guess what is based in reality and based in fiction, because I think it's better to leave you guessing. I guess that's it for today. Please come back tomorrow, where I'll begin to talk about how I started learning Japanese, studying abroad, and then living here in Tokyo. I'll also tease some more screenshots from the game. Until then, I'll leave you with this track from Ginga Tetsudo no Yoru, or Night on the Galactic Railroad by Hosono Haruomi. If you'd like to listen to that, please visit healingprocessgame.com to view the additional links in the devlog. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If you'd like to get in contact and discuss the game, you can do so by dropping me an email at admin@healingprocessgame.com. See you tomorrow. Sam.